welcome everybody. I'm quite proud that so many people are joining us here for the session. I first have to apologize that I'm single here. My colleague Sebastian Elbe wanted to come here, but he unfortunately didn't fix it. And well, and I probably also to apologize. I'm really from Germany. So, what I'm talking about? Well, I'm talking about a very specific form of networks, but it's in very great variations about regional networks and regional network governance. I first will give you some, well, let's say, theoretical thoughts or insights in that issue. And then we have two examples. One is from the Sprint Consult, and this is a pity why Sebastian is not here. So I am not very familiar with this case, but the other one is from us, and I can give you more insight views if they are wanted. And finally, we come to some conclusions and recommendations. Well, if one is talking about networks, well, it is very, very difficult. You find networks in a great bunch of different sciences and issues. When it comes to the social sciences, more or less, you find two traditions. The one is from the economics theory, which is, well, let's say somewhere about the cause idea of the theories of the firm, of organizational issues, up to the transaction cost theory. And all this is somehow about why are corporate actors necessary at all. So if the free market is much better than a bland economy, so why do we need companies? So this was the starting point of this, and then there was always this kind of a bipolarity of market and hierarchy in this, and the researchers found out, well, there's a lot of in-betweens, and a very broad variety of mixed and hybrid organizational forms, which must be classified as somehow as networks. Coming to the other side of the theoretical strengths, if you're coming to regional governance networks, it's political theories. Well, just give also a short glance on this, new public policy, regulation theories, governance theories. All they are more or less about the advantage of governance in comparison with government. So there's some kind of a recognition of a shift from the political system to society when it comes to political decision or decision making, and a more participative policy should be available through networks. And there is some kind of a relationship between the decision makers and the people, which is in the focus of all the study. So here it is more of the people inside the network to cooperate in the network. And here it's more about the, let's say, impact of the network or the relationship between the network and the people, or whoever it is. So Sebastian and I, several times ago, thought, well, these are two parts of aspects we have to evaluate, and it is, of course, very important to get it differentiated. So we have something we call governance within networks. So the coordination of action. So what we must do to make the network work as a network. And we have another kind of working with governance through networks, the effectivity of cooperation. Of course this is interrelated, but we have we find a lot of networks in this field, regional governance, which is quite well working, but nobody cares. And we have, of course, some networks which are really not a network. Maybe it's a dictatorship, there's one who is doing the work, but they are really effective. And if it comes to this, we need some kind of institutions, social institutions for governance of networks. And these institutions have to continuously, repeatedly produce something. Well, on the one hand side, very easily to understand, impact. So it's not only having one impact and that's it. In this case, a network, of course, complete. You have such kind of forms, especially in the field of scientists and experts. So we probably can have a joint project, a joint evaluation, and say, well, okay, now we work together, and if it's finished, it's finished. So That's it. But if it is a continuous working regional governance network, you need to continuously produce some kind of impact, otherwise it's senseless. And to have the network working, you need something which is called trust. So this is, let's say, the oil which makes a machine run in networks. This is a difference, of course, to organizations where have a lot of contracting orders and strict regulations. And it's, of course, a difference to the market situation where two people come together just because one, well, has a car and the other wants one. So trust means trust in cooperation. This is the most important thing, driving force, and it must be reproduced by the network. So this is a theoretical part. Coming to this, we derive several numbers of criteria from this. These criteria for the governance within networks, well, this one is very easily understandable if you come to organizational theory. You find organizations are characterized by goals, structures, processes, actors, and of course, resources. If it comes to networks, these kind of goals, structures, processes, etc., are from a special form. So I put it here in this table. I don't want to go through that in detail, but just highlight one point. If it comes to actors, in our case of regional governance, we almost every time have delegates. So nor you nor me are able to say, well, we join this governance network like we joined the EES. So you are a member of this kind of networks because you are a representative of the union, a representative of the government, etc., etc. So this is very particular, specific form, and you can find that in those kind of regional governance networks in most cases. And you have also some other very particular forms in between. And of course, this is the ideal type here. And it's, from my point of view, networks are always unstable. They are shifting to one or the other extreme. So of course they can break off, and then we have market, we have nothing, we have no network, no grouping at all. Or they try to get an organization, which means they just build up a board, they build up personal, they just define their goals, etc. And that's what happens to many networks too. But in a way, it's sometimes very difficult to differentiate between a network and an organization. So of course, a lot of networks also has some people which are doing here personal, which are doing secretary work or organizing meetings, etc. So it is very, very difficult to say, well, this is already in a new organization, but it is still a network. So coming to the outside world, so to speak, to the governance through the networks, we also have, I only want to mention it here, some points where you have to have an eye on if you want to evaluate networks in governance networks. Okay, so the first question is, are you reaching the target groups? Are the target groups, and maybe some really important stakeholders which are not involved in the network, are accepting that this a network exists and is doing this work? Is there any impact of the network action at all? Are this impact sustainable? And are they useful for the target groups? So this is more or less from the project view, if so to speak. If you will do a project, it's some kind of the circles, therefore are audited like that. And you have a little bit like that inside the network working too. And of course, this is very open and very, very general. So let's come to some examples and to some problems. So of course, there are a lot of challenges for network analysis. We picked out 3, which we find very important in the case of regional governance. So as you have already recognized, we are talking about more or less processes. So regional network governance is a process, but the methods, as you have presented them, and of course they are not so similar as we have, they are very structural and very punctual. So you just have to make a photo of the network. 5 minutes later, the network is changed. It's the same in your case, of course. But if we are talking about regional governance, this is of course the normal case. So they should do some governance of an area forever, so to speak. Multi-level analysis. We talked about people in your case, and in a way we are talking about people here too. But remember that we are talking about delegates. So these networks are some kinds of netting the institutions. And these people are not personal members, but they are representatives of other organizations. And this makes it, of course, very difficult in this work of networks and to differentiate this. We'll get on this point. And the last point is the communication analysis. Of course, you can analyze the communication processes and you get a different view inside the network. But we wanted to highlight here the external communication. So what happens if this guy is going home from his network meeting in the organization? We don't know. We do not even look at it normally because we only focus on the network. So, how to do that in practice? So, two examples. One is about regional bioenergy networks in Germany. Well, please ask me for more details in the coffee break. It's very roughly through that. That's what the German government sometimes did. They're doing a competition. If you build up bioenergy network in your region, you can get here, this is a win, so to speak, 400,000 euro for 3 years. But first you have to deliver a concept paper. Then we decide about this concept paper, if it's worth to develop a regional development program. And then in the end, the selected 25 regions will get this funding of 400,000 euro in 3 years. And of course, the region have to put some money in there. On the issue of bioenergy, and there are several different other issues in that. It's quite common, a very fashionable way of funding regions in Germany. And in this case, and almost in every kind of this case, you got a picture like this. These are the 25 model regions, and then you have a south-north, west-east differentiation. So the weakest networks are somewhere around in the east, and the strongest one is the southwest. Surprise, surprise, if you are familiar with Germany, here are the rich countries, Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, and here are the poor East German, very low density of population countries in East Germany. So this is it, and well, what you're doing is probably the same as my colleagues from Sprint did. You collect network analysis data in the 25 regions. What they did is they did it in 2 times at the beginning, in 2009 and now in 2012 at the end of the funding. And then they do something which is, I think now should be standard nowadays. They also added some qualitative material to that quantitative analysis. So they ask all people involved in these networks in a quantitative survey, and they ask some people about getting more details of the work of the network. So, and then you get in the next step such kind of pictures as you got. Well, this is for sure a much higher density. This is as we probably would call it, a good example. High density, very compact, many actors involved, beautiful. That's what we want. And, sorry, but we also find this kind of types. 4 actors, normally the providers or those people who are paid from somebody, who are doing all the work, and the others are flowing around somehow, and they are not interrelated at all, very weak, very small, low density. So, and now you come, of course, to the result. This is a bad and the other is a good case. But now, by doing this second analysis, you find that there is, of course, a shifting process. The networks tend to decrease in size, but of course a smaller one is normally more increased. So it's the extreme situation is getting not so extreme 3 years after, at the end of the funding period. Certain parts are coming closer, but it does not mean it's always going like that. But sometimes it's always shifting because of the topics. Well, I did together with my colleague Andrew Martinuzzi for more than 10 years the network of environmental issues in the Die Gewalt, in the German Evaluation Society. This was also is the same. If you talk about energy, the energy experts are there. If you're talking about water, the water experts are there. And that's what's happening in this kind of governance too. Multi-level analysis, well, they did not do that, but there was a very interesting idea we can discuss about that. They tried to get some information about the social capital of the actors. So how many connections to whom do you have? And to weight it to the importance of that. Just to get an estimator about the external communication. I found this a very tricky idea. So they do not have a communication analysis at all, but at least an idea what probably could happen. But let's move to the second case. This is our case. So it is a cross-border network. So the difficulty we have is we are now situated in the southwest of Germany, close to the border to France and to Luxembourg and Belgium. This region is, from a tradition, a very important one. We have 3 wars in this area, a lot of people killed, fighting. We have 3 different kind of languages. We have nation states, different kind of nation states. But we have and therefore the fighting was about that, a lot of unique things. So it's especially coal and iron mining, steel producing industry, and therefore you have a cooperation across the borders also for hundreds of years. Nowadays this region is maybe famous because of this small village associated here, it's called Schengen. So, and Schengen, of course, is opening the borders, and this means opening the labor market here. And nowadays we have 200,000 people crossing the borders in various directions every day for work. And this makes a labor market, a transnational labor market, in a very specific form, and that's what we are interested about. So this, of course, labor market in Germany is regulated by Berlin, somewhere outside here, and the front in France is here, and the Brussels are here. So the region has, of course, a lot of difficulties with this. And therefore, they built up a lot of institutions, networks, which are about to regulate problems in the labor market of the regions. So I listed them here, and you see some of them are 40 years old, and there are still some which are newly built. So what did we? Well, we first did, of course, the analysis. The first question is, what kind of networks are existing and which of them are important? So first we tried that from the literature. Then we tried to select authors, and we probably do nearly the same as you. We asked them, and we got new recommendations. And so in the end, we had 70 in-depth interviews of experts, which are telling us these are the most important networks, and you have to ask these people. Then we did a standardized online survey with those people. And again, it is very problematic on the method issues, because some of those people are, let's say, at the border of the networks and the other in the middle, and of course this is also related to the response rate. Yes. So let's come to our picture. This is also a very typical one. Well, this is a mixture of personnel, so these are individuals, and these are the networks they are inclusive to. And this picture is just to show that we have in the middle 15 people who are involved in several networks. This is quite easy to understand if you know. This one is a union network, and there's a second union network up in the north, and there's an integrating network of the both networks. And this is also involving mostly the unions. And this is the economical network, which is connecting, for example, here on this side, the chambers of trade and the chamber of commerce. So you see, the problem we have is that we have a lot of persons which are involved in several networks, and then we have to ask them about this individually. So let's talk about our. Yeah. I'm surely at the end. Quite short now. So we have a number of networks. which increased in the number of networks increased in the last 40 years, but there was not much dynamics in that. The dynamics is more about the competences inside and the influence inside. So it makes it also very difficult to have such a spot on it to judge about these things. I always talked about this multi-membership thing, which is very difficult to handle. You can read that in the paper, how we tried that. And the communication analysis is quite simple. Our problem is a language. So there is a language barrier, and not only for us, but also for the people inside. So this makes it very difficult. So the people in the unions are talking to each other, but they are talking French in France and German, and they are not talking to each other. So let's come to a resume on that very briefly. If you talk about the process, the dynamics, this means you have to look at at least a longitudinal design. And you probably can do that qualitatively, but this depends on the kind of networks. In our kind of networks, I think it is quite possible, but what about the validity? We don't know. If we came on the multi-level aspect, the result is also quite easily. You have a gold standard. This means you have to interview several persons from the organizations to get a viewpoint on that. But this makes it sometimes very, very difficult to get the answers because people don't think that they are involved in those issues. But you have, of course, taken into account the institutional relation between the networks. And finally, I think this is the most open question, the communication aspect. There is no gold standard, nothing which you can say it should be done. External communication must be in focus. I think this idea with the social capital is quite fascinating, but I'm not quite sure if this is the solution. And it makes a lot of work if you have to ask all the people in all the organizations and to get an analysis about the communication flow there inside. And normally you don't have the money for that in your relation, unfortunately. So this is the point I'm coming to an end. Thank you very much for the very brief rest.
Thank you very much.